So, proof number one. The practices and beliefs of the people the prophets were sent to clearly show the majority of them already believed in Allah as the Rabb. Okay? So, throughout time, we kind of said this already, but now we're going to prove it. Throughout time, people already believed in Allah as the Rabb. It was not something new that the prophets had to come with and prove to them. People already understood this. Okay? So how do we know this? The Quraysh is the case in point. We're going to use the Quraysh as an example. Regarding the Quraysh, the Quran says explicitly that they believed in Allah as the Rabb. When the messenger, Allah said to the messenger to ask the Quraysh, who is the Rabb of the heavens and the earth? And they will say Allah. So not only did they believe in Allah as the Lord of everything, but they also knew that they also called him Allah. They didn't just say God or something else. They actually called him Allah. So the Quraysh were people that believed in the Rabb before the Prophet even came to them. Second proof about this is the Quran makes it clear that they didn't reject the fact that Allah is the Rabb. They didn't reject that. They only rejected when the Prophet said to worship only him. That's when they had a problem with it. They were saying, how are you going to tell us to stop worshiping all of our other idols and only worship Allah? So they knew Allah, they knew him as the Rabb, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, the one that's above all. They knew all that. But they just refused to accept this idea that we have to worship only him. They didn't see that as right. So this is also in Surah Safat, verse 35. And then a lot of people don't know this, but Hajj was even practiced by the people before the Prophet ﷺ came. It's not like it was there. It was initiated when the Prophet came, and that's when Hajj came. The Hajj that you see today, it was different. It was not the same Hajj that we see, like whatever's going on, whatever just passed. It was not like that. But they still had a Hajj from the remnants of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Their Hajj was different though. They had a talbiyah. You guys know what the talbiyah is? So when you say labbaik Allahumma labbaik, they had that. But according to this hadith in Sahih Muslim, they added something to it. So when the Prophet used to go to perform the rituals of Hajj, they would add something to that statement. They would say labbaik Allahumma labbaik, labbaik la sharika laka labbaik. So they would say, oh Allah, I'm here at your service, I'm here at your service. There's none worthy of worship except you, but one associate with you. You possess him and what he possesses, and he does not possess you. So they had this kind of, it was a rhyme, I forgot the Arabic. Illa sharikan huwa lak, tamlikuhu wa ma malak. I think that's what the Arabic is. But they used to say this, and when the Prophet heard them come to this point, he would say, woe to you, stop, stop. Before they got to that part, the Prophet would tell them, stop, don't say that. Because the first part is fine, right? So they did even say the talbiyah, so it's pretty interesting. The fourth thing, just some other points in general, not just for the Quraysh case study, but one thing is that at the Battle of Badr, actually this is about the Quraysh, but at the Battle of Badr, both sides were invoking Allah. You know, like the Battle of Badr is the people that didn't want to become Muslim against the people that were Muslim. Both sides were asking Allah for help. It was not like just the Muslims were asking Allah for help. Both sides were. So that didn't make them Muslim. Okay? Second thing is that not only, I already said this point, second point, and then the third thing is that every religion ultimately believes in one. We kind of talked about that too. Second proof, the worst of all creation, Iblis. The worst of all creation believes in Allah as Rabb. Because he said, in Surah Hijr, it said that he said, O my Lord, O my Rabb, give me respite until the day of judgment. So he asked Allah and he called him Lord. So he knows fully that Allah is the Lord. So that's another thing that shows that prophets were not sent to show that there's a Rabb. The other thing is that the message that the prophets were sent with, this people kind of already know, so I'm just going to quickly skim through it, but they didn't come to say, oh people, God exists, so believe in him. They didn't come to say that. The prophets did not have this message. If you look at every single example up here about all of the prophets, not a single one of them came and said that. They all came, actually they had a very different message, but it was all the same message amongst them. It was not about worshiping Allah as Rabb, it was about only worshiping Allah. That's the message, that was the focus. Okay? Every page of the Quran is about worshiping Allah also. So therefore, the main calling of Islam's Aqidah is to worship only him. And this is where we start the second branch, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, which Tawheed means, as we said before, to ascribe unity to Allah, to say Allah is one, right? And then uluhiyya means as the ilah. As the ilah. So what does the word ilah mean? We're going to talk about that. What does the phrase La ilaha illallah really mean? Okay? Before I even go any further, I want you guys to tell me what is the literal translation for this phrase. Yes?
There is none other worthy of worship but Allah.
Does anyone have any other guess?
No, the literal, I got you.
Yes.
La ilaha, no God, there is no God except Allah.
There
Right?
will be no deity.
Okay, what else?
Or deity, yeah.
No
what-
deity other than God.
Yeah,
Anyone have any other guesses?
that's the literal.
Okay. Well, it's pretty much on point, but we're going to clarify it a little bit. Okay, so La ilaha illallah, right? La means no. Ilah, we're not defined yet. Illa means except, and Allah is actually from al-ilah, the ilah. So what is this word ilah? What does it actually mean? Okay, so Ibn Abbas, we talked about him in the first class. He was like one of the most knowledgeable of the companions. The Prophet specifically mentioned a lot of, there's hadith that show that he was really knowledgeable. And he defined ilah as something that people turn to and worship. And then another scholar said that ilah is given to, as a name given to every object that's worshipped. So anything that's worshipped or turned to, that everyone turned to, that's called an ilah. Okay? So literally, this phrase actually means there is no one worshipped except Allah. Is that true or false? Who thinks that's true? Raise your hand.
Wait, there is no one worshipped except
Yeah, just like how it says it up there. There is no one worshipped except Allah. That is the literal translation of this phrase. Who think that's true? Who thinks that's true? Okay. Who thinks that's false? Why do you think it's false, Safwan?
People worship like things in the creation.
Yeah, people, I mean, we see this all the time. People worship other stuff, right? So when you translate it in English, you can't just translate it like that. There's something that's missing in this phrase, actually. Like, literally in the Arabic grammar, there's something that's missing, and that's because in Arabic, it's assumed. There's something like in the Arabic, the grammatical structure of this, there's a part of it, it's bihaq, which means in truth. So this actually is supposed to be translated, there is no one in truth deserving to be worshipped except Allah. That's what it actually means. So when you say this in Arabic, it makes sense to people that are Arab. But when we translate it, that's why you have to put the full thing. You have to say worthy of worship except Allah. Okay, so it's not actually in there, but it's understood. So that's the actual translation. There is no one who has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Okay? All right, and if for anyone that's actually never mind, let's leave that for now. Okay, so why this phrase is perfection? So why is this what's so special about this phrase? So if you look at it, there's actually two parts to this phrase. The first part is a negation. You're negating everything that's worshipped. You're saying that there's nothing that deserves worship at all, period. You're saying there is no ilah, la ilaha, there is no ilah, right? The second part is the affirmation. That's when you're affirming that God is the one who deserves worship. Allah is the one who deserves worship, right? So if we had a statement like Bob is the smartest person in this class, that's praise. We're praising Bob, right, as the smartest person in this class, right? But if you said that there's no one smart in this class except Bob, that's a difference. You're praising him, and not only are you praising him, but you're making him exclusively the only person that's smart, right? This phrase is even better because it's the most exclusive it can get. There is no time or place for this statement. It's not like La ilaha illallah today and then something else tomorrow. No. It's not like La ilaha illallah in this room and then somewhere else is something else. No. La ilaha illallah forever and wherever. It doesn't matter. La ilaha illallah, period. So this phrase is the most exclusive, it's the best praise, and it's not restricted to time or place. Also, a point about this phrase I just wanted to mention, because we live in a campus environment and this issue comes up a lot. The first part is negation. You're actually negating whatever is worshipped other than Allah, right? And in the name of pluralism, sometimes we feel like we have to accept everyone else's beliefs. Be careful about that. Islam doesn't say that you accept everyone's beliefs. We understand other people's beliefs. Like we respect that they can have their own beliefs, right, in this society, but we don't accept that. We don't think that's fine. Like it's really important in our belief that we don't believe in any other ilah. That's really important. So just be careful, like, going through this whole idea of pluralism. Just make sure that you keep your own ground. When you're saying la ilaha illallah, that's what you're actually saying. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the origins of shirk. So shirk. Can anyone define shirk real quick? We're not going to go into much depth. Unfortunately, we don't have time. Yeah.
It's a partner.
Yeah. So like if you're associating a partner with Allah, right? That's the basic translation. That's not the most comprehensive one, but we'll run with that for now. Okay. So for example, the classical example would be like worshiping an idol, right? That's considered shirk. Where did this come from? And this is kind of going back to the question that you had earlier. Where did this all come from? The origin of shirk. Islam is very clear on this. In history we learned that in ancient times man used to worship rocks and all that kind of stuff. And that's how, and fire and all that stuff. Yeah. Then Islam disagrees with that very clearly actually. Islam does not say that we originally used to worship idols. If you go to history will tell you that man originally worshipped idols. We don't believe that. Okay? We're going to have to hold just because we're really short on time, unfortunately. I'm sorry. So, originally that's not the case. Originally, Adam a.s. was a worshipper of Allah only. He didn't worship anyone else except Allah. And there's actually a hadith which says that for 10 generations, when Adam came to this earth, for 10 qurun, for 10 generations, there was no one worshipped on this planet except Allah. There was no such thing as idol worship in the very beginning, for 10 generations. Now the word qarn is used, and it's actually very interesting because I think in the Bible it says like there's 6,000 years ago or something like that, or 6,000 years that the earth was there. But from just this hadith, it's not true, because qurun can mean generation, which is like 1,000 years. So this means that for about 10,000 years, the people only worshipped Allah. They only worshipped Allah. They don't worship anyone else. Can you imagine that, like an entire world where everyone just worships Allah, right? And what happened was there were these 5 really righteous people. Their names are Wad, Suwa', Yahuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. They're in Surah Nuh if you're interested. If you look in Surah Nuh, which is Surah number 71, I believe. In that surah, Allah talks about this story. And these are the 5 righteous people. They were really renowned in their community as being these symbols of righteousness. And people loved them a lot. And the first of them that died off, his name was Wad. When Wad died, the people gathered and they mourned over his death. And they really felt bad because this righteous example that was pushing them to do good was no longer there, pushing them to do good. And Iblis saw this. He saw them mourning, and he promised to Allah that he's going to lead the children of Adam astray. And he's been waiting for an opportunity to get people to disobey Allah, right? So he comes in the form of a man, and this actually has been done even in the time of the Prophet, like when they were conspiring on what to call the Prophet. He came in the form of an old man. Iblis did that also in the time of the Prophet. So he did this at that time also, and he came to them and he said, why don't you guys make an idol so that you can remember him, this man, so every time you see the idol, you're reminded of whatever good he used to do, so then you'll also do that good. It sounds like a really good idea, like, because you're only trying to do good. You're just trying to look at the idol and then use that to remind you to do good things for Allah. It's not like you're trying to do anything else. So they liked this idea, and they decided to do that. They made an idol, and later on, once again, Shaitan's very sneaky. He doesn't come out and say, make the statue and bow down to it right away. No, he doesn't do that. That would be way too obvious. He's really sneaky and he's very smart, and he has a plan. So then he comes back and he says that all of you should take images with you, these pictures and these idols, in your own houses, so that way you can also be reminded of this guy named Wad, this righteous person. And they did this with the rest of the other 4 righteous people. Until that generation passed, and then Shaitan came to them and said that you're not good enough to go to Allah directly. You need to ask through these people, because these people were righteous and they used to do a lot of good, and you can't ask Allah directly, you should ask through them. So they started to accept that, and they believed that. They believed that they were not good enough to go to Allah directly. And unfortunately, this idea that you're not good enough, it plagues a lot of youth. Like, a lot of youth have this idea. Maybe they don't resort to shirk, but they just feel hopeless. And this was such an erroneous idea, because first of all, you're assuming that this person is good. How do you know that? This person could be perfect on the outside. They could be the best in the world, but inside they could be hypocrites. And you're going to go through them because you think that they're so righteous? Let's say even a person is established to be righteous. Let's say a prophet. You're going to go through the person that's established to be righteous to Allah. Allah did not like this concept at all. So He sent Nuh, the first prophet after Adam. The first prophet after Adam was sent, messenger, to tell the people that you should not be doing this. You don't have to ask through these idols. You ask Allah directly. And actually we see, and they responded saying, we're not going to leave these gods. They're going to continue worshiping them. And this is the statement of Ibn Abbas, which I was referring to earlier, which is actually in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. So in case you want to see this also, this is the statement that he was explaining about this. So, how is shirk rationalized? How do people support shirk? When they do an act of like worshiping an idol or something like that, people associate it with this idea that they want to just get closer to God. That idea is a very good idea. Is there anything wrong with that? Like the idea of wanting to get closer to God? Does anyone see any problem with that? There is nothing wrong with that idea at all. It's a very awesome idea, wanting to get closer to God. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is how you're doing it. You're going through something that Allah gave no authority for, and you're asking them to ask Allah on your behalf, or so that they can ask Allah for you because they have some higher status. So that's why this is the ayah which Allah talks about in Surah Zumar verse 3. He says that they said, "Ma na'buduhum illa liyuqarribuna ila Allahi zulfa." We don't worship them except that they get us closer to Allah. That's the reason why we worship them. That's the reason. It's a really good and awesome intention, but it's not the way we do it. And actually it's very interesting. After I studied this, I was studying this verse in the class that I was taking about this. And a few weeks after that, I had a trip where I went to the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and they had a section on Islam. This was about like 4 or 5 years ago. No, actually more than that. No, it was about like 5 years ago. And they had a section on Islam that was not that developed. Before that, they had all the ancient civilizations. So we walked through the Greek civilization, Roman civilization, all this stuff, and you saw all of their gods and all that, all of their past history, which really revolved around this mythology, right? And it was crazy because once we got past the Greek and Roman and all these past civilizations, we came to the Islamic civilization. And there was a verse that was on there. Oh, that's the wrong page. There was a verse that was on there in the Islam section, and actually I took this picture when I was over there because I was so amazed. It blew my mind because it was literally a few weeks after I studied this. The one verse that they had over there was the verse from Surah Az-Zumar, verse 3. مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَىٰ. We don't worship them except that they get us closer to Allah. There was no translation next to this verse, so it's not like they did this on purpose. They did not do this on purpose. It was ironic that this verse was literally after the section on all of that past mythology. It's really crazy. It blew my mind.
Wait, so why did they choose that verse then?
It was just random. I don't know. I don't think they didn't have any translation, nothing. That was the crazy part. There was nothing.
Maybe this is the only piece they found that was well decorated enough to put up there.
But it's crazy that one verse out of the 6,000 verses was chosen. That's something that's really something. SubhanAllah. And it was ironic because unfortunately people walking past that will never understand what that means. No one knows what that means. They'll just walk by and look at the nice calligraphy and they won't even know. I'm not even joking. There's nothing. If you look at my friend, he also didn't know what it meant. So I love him by the way. He's a good friend of mine. So so most people will not understand this, unfortunately. But if you understand this, the reason I go over this is because if you understand this basic idea of why people commit shirk, you'll understand why people still do it today. You know, people got these nice costumes on when they got all fancy and they have this new technology and all that stuff. But you know what? Deep down inside, we're still humans and we still do the same. We rationalize things the same way. A lot of what we do. So this reason still prevails. You will see it. Now that I pointed it out to you, I guarantee you will see it. If you really focus, you will see that many times. So the condition of the shahada. If you just say La ilaha illallah, does that make you a Muslim? Obviously not, right? So that's why we're going to go over some of what the scholars define as the conditions for it. Okay? So condition 1, knowledge, okay, versus ignorance. Allah says in Surah Muhammad, فَعَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Know that there is no one who deserves worship except Allah. So you have to know what you're saying. You know, if we wanted to, like Muayyad, who was playing the surfer guy yesterday, and you know, just tell him to say La ilaha illallah, and he just repeats and says La ilaha illallah like right after that, it doesn't mean anything at all. Nothing. You know, it has absolutely no meaning. Like it's not like he became Muslim. Like, you know, you can't. That's why forced conversions are not a part of Islam. It just doesn't work. Okay, so knowledge versus ignorance. It's the first condition. So that person, if you go up to on the street and you just ask him to say La ilaha illallah, he would fail the first condition. Okay. Condition number 2 is certainty versus doubt. Al-yaqeen versus shak. So certainty versus doubt. إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا. Only those who believe in Allah and His Messenger are those who believe and they don't doubt after that. So having certainty in whatever you're saying, La ilaha illallah, so you know it, you understand it, you know what this phrase means, and now you're certain about it. That's the second condition. You're certain about this phrase. So it could be that person, you tell him the translation and they're just saying it, they fully know what they're saying, but still doesn't mean anything. You failed the second condition. You're not certain about it. Okay? Third one is acceptance versus rejection. Okay? Qabul versus rad. Okay? Acceptance versus rejection. Can someone give me an example of someone in history that fulfilled the first 2 conditions and failed the third one? Can someone tell me an example?
Heracles?
Huh? What did you say?
Heracles.
That was really good, actually. That was a good example of that. That's one. Okay, there's someone else. I mean, there's a lot of examples, but that was good. That was really good. Iblis, exactly. Iblis is like the prime example. Like, he's used a lot as an example. How?
He refused to make sujood.
How do you prove that he had the first 2?
Because he was raised from the ranks of the jinn, because he was
Okay.
righteous, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he believed, and
Right.
he didn't have any doubt.
Yep.
And obviously he can't have that because he was there.
Yeah.
I mean, once again, we go back to my example of how do we know God exists. Quran, God is talking to us directly. God was talking to Iblis directly.
Exactly.
So,
Yep. So those are good examples. Okay. So Iblis directly talking to Allah, saying, making dua to give him respite. So he knows La ilaha illallah. He knows that. He also is certain about it. There's no doubt in Iblis' mind. Okay? And the problem is he doesn't accept it. He's too arrogant to accept it. He doesn't want to accept it. There's other examples. Abu Talib also was like this. Abu Talib, he knew and he also had certainty, but he didn't want to accept it because he didn't want to leave the religion of his forefather, Abdul Muttalib. That's why he died saying, Ala millati Abi Abdul Muttalib. He said, I don't want to leave the religion of my dad or my grandfather. I don't want to leave that. So that's why he didn't accept. Okay? And Heraclius, like you mentioned, Heraclius knew, and that's why if there's a hadith where he actually tests his people by saying that I have become, if I tell you right now, and he asked the doors to be locked and everything in the back, and he said, if I tell you right now that I've become Muslim, what would you do? And the people erupted. They did not want to listen to that. They would leave him as king. And because he didn't want to lose his power, he said that he's going to stay not Muslim. Condition 4, submission versus not submitting. Okay, this part's pretty complicated, and to explain it is going to be difficult. So, I guess the solution is not to explain it. Because there's literally there are 7 opinions on this issue. And to go over the 7 opinions would be a little bit exhaustive, so
Wait,
just...
Wait, condition 4, submission versus not?
Yeah, what I mean by this is, let's say you believe it, you know it, you believe it with certainty, and you also accept it, right?
Right.
After all that, you have to submit. Like you're saying a statement of you're becoming Muslim, right? and there's a level of submission. The question is, what's that level of submission? Is it that you just don't do anything after that? You said La ilaha illallah, I believe that firmly, and I have full knowledge of it,
And you accept it.
and that's it. And I
What's
accept it, and
the-
that's it.
What's
Like,
the
that's it.
majority opinion?
The majority opinion, I don't know what the majority opinion is. I think the majority opinion is salah. Like, as long as you don't leave salah completely, because there's a clear hadith which says that the separation between a man and kufr and leaving Islam is the leaving of prayer.
What about that other man though, that woman who was granted Jannah, but she didn't pray, right?
Yeah, so there are exceptions to this, and it's not like this is a hard rule. Like, that's why Allah is the judge ultimately. Like, we don't go around ruling that. That Allah is the ultimate judge for who's going to enter Jannah and not.
So shouldn't there be a condition that says submission for submission versus not, according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy?
Wait, say that again?
According to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. So like, you submit and we all sin.
Right.
But, it also depends on whether or not Allah wants to forgive you for those sins or not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're just talking about conditions from whatever we see. Like, it's not, of course, ultimately for every affair, it's Allah's judgment. Right? We're just,
I
yeah.
think this is where what Yasir Qadi says comes into play, whereas like when Allah issues a warning, it's not the same as a promise. Like if he promises, like if you say Subhanallah, a date palm will be planted in Jannah for you, that's a promise. On the other hand, if he says like if you do this, this will happen to you, like if you don't pray and you die as a mushrik or something like that, that's a warning to deter you from deter you from being ignorant of your prayers. On the other hand, a warning does not have to be fulfilled by God. It's not a promise. It's not like it will happen to you. It's like a parent telling a child, like, if you do this, then I'll punish you. But then later, the parent forgives the child. It's not a promise like, all right, I promise you on my honor that if you do this, then I'll punish you. Like when God issues a warning, it's not like that. It's not like a promise. A warning is simply a warning. And a promise is completely different. A promise is like something he won't go back on.
Mhm.
A promise, like if you do this, this is guaranteed for you, that's different.
Yeah.
And if you do this, you'll be punished like this. That's a warning.
Yeah.
So that's where this comes into play. Like even if there's a hadith that
Right.
says that this is, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's an entire.
Yeah, there are definitely exceptions to
It's
this. That's why, like, if we were to talk about the exceptions, we would literally be here forever. But yeah, this in general, like this is the condition. I'll tell you the harshest opinion on this issue, and at least we should at least try to avoid going below that anyway. Like we should try to avoid going below that. The harshest opinion on this issue is that you have to do all the 5 pillars. Okay, so I mean, as long as you're doing the 5 pillars, you're straight. So just to be on the safe side, just without getting into any detail, just to be on the safe side, just do the 5 pillars. Okay, and we really don't have time to get into all the different opinions and the proofs and all that stuff. Okay, condition 5, being true to it, versus lying. So there's a hadith. All these hadith cause a lot of questions. But anyways, there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh bin Jabal that whoever says La ilaha illallah, there is no one who deserves worship except Allah, and Muhammad is messenger, truly from his heart, sidqan min qalbi, then he will enter Jannah, or he will be saved from the fire. So this part is really important. You have to be really true to your heart that when you're saying the statement of La ilaha illallah. Okay. The 6th condition is sincerity, which kind of goes with the previous condition, but the word is ikhlas. Like you're saying it with sincerity. You're only doing it for Allah's sake, because we know that the Prophet said that actions are judged by intentions. So if you said the shahada for a worldly reason, or if even you're not doing it for anything else except for your own personal gain in this world or anything like that, then that's what you're going to get. You're not going to get Jannah with that. That's why ikhlas is really important, that you're doing it for the sake of Allah only. And this one we really won't talk about much because it's a lengthy discussion. Actually, we'll end with this hadith, the hadith of bitaqa. Does anyone know what bitaqa means?
You mean ticket?
Yes. Okay, it's like a card, right?
Yeah.
So there's a famous hadith al-bitaqa it's called. In this hadith, there's a man that will come on the Day of Judgment that will have 99 scrolls worth of sins. 99 scrolls worth of sins. And each scroll is like the distance between the east and the west in one narration. There's another narration which I forget now. But either way, the point is that it was the scrolls are huge, full of sins, 99 scrolls. And then there's this little card, and the angels put this card on the scale, and that card outweighs the rest of the 99 scrolls that this man had. And on this card was La ilaha illallah, the statement that there is no one who deserves worship except Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, أفضل ما قلت أنا والنبيون من قبلي أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك والحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. The best thing me and the previous prophets have said is there is no one who deserves worship except Allah alone, without any partners. To Him belongs the kingdom, and to Him belongs the praise, and He has power over everything. This is the best phrase. And we know the hadith, last time I mentioned the hadith of Musa. When Musa asked Allah to tell him something to say, Allah said, say La ilaha illallah. Say that there is no one who deserves worship except Allah. And Musa got not upset, but he got, he was hoping for something more. He was hoping for something different, so he asked Allah, all of your servants say this, can I have something different? And Allah said, if you were to take the 7 heavens and the 7 earths, and you were to put it on one side of the scale, and you were to take this statement and put it on the other, the latter would outweigh the former. La ilaha illallah would outweigh the former. So this branch that we're talking about, it's a really important branch. It's literally the ticket to paradise, this branch. There's nothing else in Islam that you can really say that about. Nothing else. But the saying of the Shahada is literally the ticket to paradise. And it's also the ticket, if you don't have that ticket, it'll be the other way. You're going to be going to hellfire. That's why it's really important that this idea is that's why every single prophet pushed this idea. Because this is the critical point. Okay, so it's something you definitely have to look into. There's a lot of hadith about the rewards of it and how Allah forgives because of just this one statement. But that's pretty much all we have time for. If anyone has any questions or anything about the material, are we fine? Yes.
Add the
Sure.
thing about people of the past worshiping fire and rocks. That's kind of been disproved right now. Recent research into the religion of people of the past, that shows that originally even cavemen were monotheistic. Though this idea of them worshiping the sun, there were pictures of people worshiping the sun. So we assumed eventually at first that they were worshiping literally the sun, that the drawing over there was the sun. But now recent opinions on this is maybe their idea of God was something that gave out like a blinding light, and the only way they could convey it in pictures was to draw a sun. So therefore, you have people bowing down to the sun. This does not mean literally like they bow down to the sun. Now all of these are assumptions because we weren't originally there. But the two assumptions are, one assumption is they're simply worshiping the sun. The other assumption is whatever they worshipped, they couldn't convey it in any better image other than the imagery of a blinding light, which we assume now to be the sun. But the images don't actually portray the sun. It's more like something that's given out light.
Yeah.
Right? So they were originally monotheistic.
That's interesting.
So just wanted to add that out there.
That's interesting. Jazakallah khair for that.
Well, relating to that, but if it wasn't in some way kind of wrong, why would Allah send prophets to kind of remind people again, the right way?
I'm not saying they were always monotheistic, but
Right.
originally, if you go back to the earliest records, they were monotheistic. I'm not saying they worship Allah, but they were monotheistic from all the research that we have right now, the most ancient evidence that we have. And then later on, we do have evidence of them worshiping the fire, stones, and stuff like that. But if you compare, carbon dating and all that, you will see evidence, artifacts of people worshiping this sun-like thing, whatever they're worshiping. That's the earliest ones. And these are the stones and the fire and all that comes much later on.
Would that make them monotheistic though? Because they weren't worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
We do not know that was Allah or not, because we know Allah, his veil is nur, so maybe he revealed himself in the form of them. So this whole illuminated being could have just simply been Allah. We don't know, we can't assume that. We're just saying that the simplest assumption is that they were monotheistic.
That's interesting.
And even if it doesn't serve the purpose of them worshiping Allah, it does serve the purpose of that technically, our first idea of God is always monotheistic, because the earliest records show that they were monotheistic. Whether it's Allah or not, the first idea that comes to mind is a monotheistic, like a singular united being rather than multiple beings.
Yeah.
At least it adds evidence to that.
Why
Even if they were worshiping the sun, even then it's still a monotheistic idea.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the first, was it the first lesson or the second lesson where you said like the first idea of God we have is a singular being? Was it in the second lesson that you mentioned that? Like 50% of the world's population.
Oh yeah,
are-
that was the last one, the last third class.
And a child always thinks of God in monotheistic
Right.
terms,
Right.
and then yeah. So there you go.
Yep.
It adds evidence to that.
Why did you go over condition number 7?
Why did I what?
Why did you go over condition number 7?
Conditions. I'm sorry. How did
Number
you?
7, level 3?
We could. It's just a little more lengthy to talk about it. I mean, we could talk about it.
Is it,
It is important.
why study the last class?
Why study the last class?
Yeah, why study the last class?
Because we only have 4. But, I mean, we could, if there's enough interest for it. I don't know. I think we only have this place booked for 4 times. The issue is with booking also. But if there's enough interest for it, I love this material. I don't know if you could tell, because sometimes it can be pretty hard to read. You know, but I really love this material. It's awesome, and it really, like, when I learned this material, it really changed my whole perception on things. So I love to teach it too, and I hope you guys benefited from it. If there's enough interest in it, then inshallah maybe we could try to work something out for having continued classes.
There's
Like, I
definitely
would-
enough interest for it if they were asking the question.
Okay. I'd rather not ask if there's interest for it because it can get kind of awkward if there isn't. So how about we do this? I will. I was gonna do like an anonymous survey just so no one feels like they're put on the spot. But yeah, I'll close my eyes too. So let's see what we do. If you're interested in this, just email. How do we do this?
What if we don't have interest?
You know, if surveys, Facebook surveys, are they anonymous?
No.
They're not?
You can have, that's when we send out the surveys that he sends out after.
Okay. What we'll do is we'll post a survey on the Facebook group. So just keep on the lookout for that. If there's enough interest, you don't have to feel obliged to hit that you're interested. If you genuinely are interested in this material and you want to learn more, because there's actually a lot more material on this subject. If you're interested in the material, you want to learn more, then post or say a response. Even if you're not interested, actually, I want to hear a response because I just want to know, just so I can understand. And actually, I would really value your feedback because I'm sitting up here and I'm like, I think that I'm conveying a point, but I don't know if I'm really conveying it right. So I really value your feedback. If you do have feedback for me, we didn't really think this part out, did we? We could.
Send it on Facebook
Yeah.
and email.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, cool. If anyone has any other comments or questions regarding the course,
When we were just getting the paper.
once again, some new people came in. How many of you did not listen to class 3? Okay. Make sure you listen to class 3. Like of all the previous 2 classes class 3 is the one to watch. Like otherwise, this stuff is kind of like fuzzy. It's a little bit harder to understand. And that material is really it's very interesting, and it's also it's a good foundation to have. So definitely class 3 I would really recommend. And if anyone has any questions about anything, I don't know if that question was really answered that you asked earlier, but
We're gonna stop.
okay.
Alright. Just wanted to add something.
Fahim, you got 30 seconds. Go. Clock.
Most polytheistic religions started out as monotheistic religions, and then like basically if you see the other gods, they're more like additions to spice up the mythology of the religion. Greek religion originally started with the Kronos being the central. Was it Kronos? I think it was Kronos. I'm not sure. It was a sky god that was the central god. I'll stop right there.
No, I'm just kidding. That was very interesting, actually. Alright, جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.